Hi guys, hope you're well, and as you can see from the heading of the video, I have bought the Tudor Pelagos FXD in blue. Now this is the watch that has got me back into Instagram, back into making videos on YouTube, and it has given me that warm fuzzy feeling in my belly. I made a video about this watch a couple of years ago when it first came out. I wasn't overly impressed. I just didn't get it. It's just a bit weird, isn't it, really? A watch that can only be worn on NATOs. I've got over that, as I say, as my watch addiction has subsided. Things like that is not a big a deal as they used to be to me. Is it the perfect watch? Absolutely not. There's some flaws with it that I'll go through with you today, but it's that warm, fuzzy feeling and that blue. Oh la la. So when you're talking about a watch that you can only wear NATOs on, there isn't a metal bracelet option, there isn't I suppose you could get a leather NATO, a rubber NATO, or a material NATO, but you're getting a NATO and that's all you're getting on this. So you've got to say that the black is the obvious choice because black is a little bit more versatile and you'll get a lot more colour strap options that would go with that black dial. That did cross my mind, but it's almost nothing feels as good as the original bracelet or the original strap that you get with a watch. It feels a little bit more authentic to me. So when looking at the black dial, it's got an extra colour on there in a line of red text, and the strap is green and red, which as a combo, I think it looks fantastic. But in everyday wear, when you're wearing different shirts or jumpers, maybe that would clash a little bit more. And the simplicity of the blue and white, and that is all that's on this dial. I think that, and the blue strap has just got a hint of grey in it. You could almost call it white, which again, it just ties into less colours. So I think it's going to go with more outfits. And I just think it'll be more universal actually in the blue. And that's why I went down that road. A couple of weeks ago, I went trying on some watches and I tried on both Tudor Pelagoses in blue. I tried the original on the bracelet, and it's still a gorgeous, almost perfect watch in my eyes, but it is a big 42. It's still really thick. And when I looked at photos, I wasn't quite sure. And I tried the FXD on almost as a throwaway just because it was there. And then looking back on the photos afterwards, I was like, oh, that looks good. The blue, it's a little bit darker, it's a little bit more matted, and I think it's a little bit more suitable for everyday wear. The original Pelagos is quite a bright, in-your-face blue, and this more matted, muted blue, genuinely, even now when I've owned it a few weeks, you look down and you think, wow, that is so, so sexy. And I just love it. I absolutely adore the looks of this watch. Now, obviously, it's associated with the Marine Nationale. I think it's the French Navy. That doesn't bother me in the slightest. I know on the back of the case it does say MN24 to signify what year I got this watch. Again, no big A, no big deal. It doesn't impress me. It doesn't put me off the watch. But if anything, an association with the French Navy is more likely to put me off the watch than draw me in, if you know what I mean. I know marketing plays a big part in a lot of the watches and what they associate their brand with, but for me, in neither here nor there. It's not a good thing, but it's not a bad thing either. The bezel is a little bit different on this watch, and it goes both ways. The clicky action is absolutely, truly satisfying. But the bezel timing action is actually reversed. So instead of putting it on the minute marker and then you can time how long you've been, it's almost a countdown timer. So for example, I'm never going diving in it. How many people have ever been diving in a dive watch? I'm not so sure. But for me to use it as best I can, if I get some beers from the shop and they've been on the shelf and they're warm, I'll put them in the freezer and I'll say, right, 45 minutes and they'll be at the perfect temperature. So I'll put the watch to 45 minutes and then I know when it gets to the marker that they've been in for 45 minutes. So you just have to do things a little bit different to make it work for you, or you can actually put the marker on the minute and then you just work out, you can still count the minutes that you've been since you were timing something. So it plays with my mind a little bit like the Pelagos left-hand drive. It just plays with my mind, plays with my eyesight, and I don't particularly like the left-hand drive. And if I would prefer a more traditional bezel action and timing mechanism on this bezel, but it's not the end of the world. It still does a job. A really big thing about this watch for me was the lack of thickness. I mean, the difference between 200 meters and 500 meters water resistance is literally, so what? It's never going to go to any depth further than a bath or a swimming pool for me. And that's probably for most people that buy this watch. So the thinner case is absolutely fantastic. It's made of titanium. So even though it's a 42, which you could argue it's quite a big watch, it wears in fantastically well. It's really comfy and you can almost forget you've got it on, which for a watch addict or someone that thinks about watches more regular than normal humans, that's a really big thing. One of the issues that you could consider this watch is obviously that it is fixed lugs. You are only putting it on a NATO, but the lug to lug is quite a long, large dimension. It does make the watch feel a little bit bigger than it needs to be. Small picking things for me, but yeah, it's something that I don't particularly like. But as you wear the watch, you don't really notice it because the NATO strap covers it anyway. The legibility on this watch is top notch. Now, obviously, there's only 2 colours on the dial. Everything seems really spread out. Everything just seems the right measurement. And it's just gorgeous to look at. And it draws me in every single time I look at it. I just think, wow. So yeah, the legibility, the nice white markers, easy to read. It looks fantastic. And it's just so simple and plain design. A bonus for this watch is that it comes with 2 official Tudor straps. It comes with a Velcro NATO and a rubber strap. Now, I've got to be honest, for the last few years, the thought of ever wearing a watch with a Velcro strap was just made me feel a little bit nauseous, in all honesty. I just thought it was the naffest idea in the world, and part of me feels a little bit like that now. So what I actually do with the NATO strap now is I actually wear it the other way around. So when I put it on, I can see the clasp a little bit on the inside of my hand, but actually I see less of the Velcro. But it's a super well-made NATO. It fits really well. It's not too stiff and it's fantastic looking. So I'm not going to argue too much on that fact. Now, the rubber one for me, on paper, should be the best of the 2. It's go anywhere, do anything a little bit more. I've got a tendency to just jump in the shower when I'm wearing a watch. And if I've worn one with a leather strap, as I've done a couple of times this year, I've ended up wrecking the strap because I've just jumped in and forgot about the watch. Now on a NATO, that can dry out, not a problem. So on the rubber, I'm thinking, yeah, I'll be able to wear it all the time. I can go out with it and not worry about it as much. And it is a really comfy rubber strap, but something to consider is that it wears a little bit different. I suppose rubber is not quite as flexible and bendy as a NATO strap to go around your wrist. And if you actually look from a certain angle, for me personally, I thought, oh God, that's really off-putting. And then you start looking in the mirror and you start looking at angles and you start to wind yourself up a little bit. But then you take a step back. I'll look at it in the mirror as if other people will see this watch, and the blues of the strap and the face go fantastic. And it just looks a really classy watch when it's together with the rubber strap. So yeah, I mean, that little bit of a gap, if I wanted to, it could really piss me off, but I'm trying not to let it to. Now, as I said at the beginning, the black is the obvious choice to be a strap monster. It's just going to be a little bit more versatile than the blue. But I still think the blue is going to work on several different options. So far, I've bought a grey NATO. I've got a blue NATO that works really well with it. I even bought a leather NATO, which 50-50 at the moment. I think it's good for a change up. I don't think it's going to make the watch look any smarter or dressier. It's just good for a change. I think it would make it look quite good with an orange strap because it'd almost be like the Iron Brew Pelagos. So it will work on different straps, but ultimately, I really, really do like it on the rubber strap or the official Tudor NATO. Now, one of the things that's probably is a negative about this watch is that the Pelagos FXD, I'll be really surprised if anyone out there has got it as a one watch collection. I think it has to be part of a wider collection. I think at the very least, it needs to be part of a 2-watch collection where you could have this for everyday wear. But then you do need something for if you're going out for a meal or a wedding. I could never see myself wearing this when I'm super dressed up in a suit, maybe. Now, I don't know if my eyesight is getting worse or the 4 lines of text at the bottom of the watch are getting smaller, but it does seem to be shrunk down a little bit more on the dial, and some people hate the lines of text. I personally have always liked the look of the 4 lines of text on the Pelagos, and it does create, especially with the lack of the rehaut around the face of the watch, it does create a larger face and a larger dial. Now, I actually think it looks a little bit more basic than the original Pelagos for that matter. I don't think it is a basic watch, I just think it looks more basic than the other Pelagos, that's all. In my actual personal opinion, I know it's a new watch and I've got that lovely warm feeling in my belly, but I think it's one of the best watches, design-wise, ever made. I think if the original Pelagos was a little bit smaller in dimensions. I think it could be a world beater, which is why they brought out the Tudor Pelagos 39. But I'd want a Pelagos with a date window. And that's all I want, really. Then maybe a 4041, a little bit thinner than the original, and it would be perfect. Now, the loom is a thing to behold. Obviously, good loom is sexy. A loomed bezel is just a level above, and this watch does not disappoint. Absolutely fantastic blue. It just, it gets you all tingly inside. It's fantastic. I absolutely love loom. So this watch has got a ton of pros and cons. It's got a ton of pros and some cons, I would say. Just like any watch, there isn't a perfect watch out there for me. I can't think I've ever had a perfect watch. If I've had a really expensive high-end Rolex, well, it's too flashy for everyday use. If I've got a Tudor Pelagos, well, it's not flashy enough to go out with. So yeah, the pros are it's just super, super sexy. It's just amazing to look at, genuinely. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful watch. The loom is obviously a massive pro. The darker blue for me is something that, yeah, it just works. It looks fantastic. The double strap option of getting 2 official NATOs for me is a really big one. I think that's fantastic. And its unique design, like I've just mentioned, I think it's just a fantastic looking watch. It's thinner than the original Pelagos, which is a big, big deal. So yeah, the Pelagos, just its general design, not just this Pelagos, but all Pelagoses, they've got a really unique design, a standalone in the Tudor catalogue for me. Whereas the Black Bays, they're a little bit vintage, Submariner vibe going on with them. The Pelagos, you could argue that it's the modern Submariner, but I just think the design, the look, the titanium, the build, the micro adjustment, the rubber strap that you get with it, it's just a freaking awesome watch. But there is some cons with this watch. No date for me on a daily wearer. It's not as big a deal as it used to be, but it does. It miffs me. It pisses me off just a little bit. The lug to lug, yeah, that is definitely a con on this watch. It's just too big. But as I say, once you wear it, because of the titanium, you can get away with it. I think the way the rubber strap fits is a shame. It's not perfect, but as I say, from a distance, when I look in the mirror, I just think it looks fantastic as a combo with the actual watch. But close up, it could be something that grates on me over time. The bezel timer itself, again, it's not a deal breaker. It's not something that it's keeping me awake at night, but it is something that I wish was a little bit different. And a big one for me is the bezel overhang from the actual watch. Now, the purists out there will say, well, it's when you're wearing diving gloves and you can turn the bezel a little bit easier. And I get that, yeah, but in reality, it's just the case is a 40mm case. So in essence, I'm wearing a 40mm watch, but I can't see the 40mm watch because the bezel overhangs. So I don't think it's as aesthetically pleasing to look at, but it also makes for a larger watch when in this world, day and age, most watch enthusiasts I'm talking to, they like the smaller dimensions. So I'd like to see it just with a less overhang bezel, a bit like the Black Bay. I think it'd work really, really well. Again, really small pickings. And just to finish off, this watch, I knew it was a goer when I dreamt about it. Yes, I tried it on in the shops. I came home and a few days later, I woke up in the morning. I'm like, oh my God, I just had a dream about the Pelagos FXD. Very embarrassed to say that. But when you're at that level, guys, and you dream about a watch, you just got to go out and buy it, haven't you? So that is the watch that gave me the warm, fuzzy feeling inside. I'm super chuffed with it. I've worn it more than any of my other new watches in my collection, which over time I will share with you. But this is just a fantastic watch. I hope you like the video. I hope you like the watch, and I hope you'll subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.